What does your promised land look like? Can you see it? Can you imagine it? Can you see and feel how awesome it will be when you finally get there? Well, my friends, I've got somewhat of an interesting perspective to share with you on the idea of the promised land. And if you're game for it, I invite you to come join me as we dig into the soil of this subject together. Welcome back. My name is D. Grant Smith. I am the growth farmer for personal development through the lens of spirituality and storytelling. We're going to talk about something that really dives into more of the spiritual aspect today. I have been thinking about a lot the idea of the so-called quote unquote promised land. And I've been thinking about this for almost a year and a half since I turned 40. I'm 41 now, so it's been a little while that I've been really thinking about the promised land. Now, why 40? Well, as somebody that spent a lot of time in church and also in religious education systems from sixth grade all the way through the end of college, yeah, it was a lot. I learned a lot about the Israelites and their quest from the slavery they experienced in Egypt all the way into the promised land as told in the Bible in the books of Exodus and Leviticus and even Numbers, and probably Deuteronomy too. There was a period of time when I knew what was inside of all that stuff. Honestly, I don't know as much or remember as much as I used to, but that's not the point. The point is, in that story, the Israelites, after they escape the rule of Pharaoh and they cross the Red Sea that has been parted by Moses, they enter into the desert. Now, while they're in the desert, a lot of stuff takes place. They go from being really relieved that now they don't have to make bricks without having any straw and all the different things that they were forced to do as slaves into getting into a place where they really start complaining about how their life is because they're wandering around in the desert, and it gets to a place where they're like, what are we going to do about food? Moses says some prayer and then manna drops down from heaven. Now, I'm not a biblical scholar and I don't know exactly what manna tastes like because I don't spend my time eating manna, but I think it's something along the lines of bread that falls from the sky, and it's there every single day. So it's kind of interesting that they go from having to make their own food and figuring out how they're going to eat to survive to every day they get free food from heaven. Now, it might not be that they're getting, like this Luby's or, Golden Corral buffet with an infinite amount of selections every day. And so maybe that's what the complaining was all about, but they still have free food and they're not going to starve and die. Seems like a fairly decent deal. All along the way, there's a whole lot of complaining that takes place. This isn't right. Why can't we do this? Why are we still following Moses? Why? This sucks. Let's go back to Egypt. This is not worth our time. And Moses gets frustrated. I think God in the Bible gets frustrated. And so much so that the people that were slaves in Egypt aren't allowed to cross into the promised land. It's not until the second generation really comes up that they're able to finally cross over into the promised land and experience the promise of God. Now, that's my reflection and remembrance of what takes place in the Bible. If I am off in any way, you can drop down in the comments and correct me. I'm totally open to that. But here's my suggestion and idea and thought that I wanted to share with you guys. The more that I've read from different spiritual teachers that look at the Bible from more of a metaphoric and metaphysical perspective and see that it's such a story about human consciousness and about our mindsets, our temperaments, and the way that we think about things, the more that I have started to entertain this idea of what if the promised land isn't some sort of external place that we eventually get to when all of the stars align, when we finally get our vibrations set right, we finally have the right mindset, and we get out of our funkiness. What if the promised land is actually inside of us this entire time? And what if the promised land is actually the state of consciousness? What if the promised land is the wish fulfilled? If you've read any Neville Goddard, you know that he teaches extensively about getting into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And I'm also learning that the feeling of the wish fulfilled isn't necessarily an emotional experience. Sure, when we feel more relaxed and we feel more at peace and we feel more content with ourselves and we're operating from love that lives within, that is a feeling state. But another idea and aspect of the feeling that I've learned from Neville and from other people that teach about Neville is that the feeling is this certainty that everything is just fine right now, the way that it is. We're not striving to try to manifest some sort of change. Because I don't know about you, if you've spent any amount of time in the manifestation community or in just trying to create difference in your life, manifestation can feel like a whole lot of work. Like I've got to be saying these affirmations, or I've got to be meditating, or I've got to be doing prayer a certain way, and I've got to be doing, even in this spiritual realm to reconfigure all the stuff inside of me. All the law of attraction people talk about how you have to be aligned with the right vibration, which can get kind of confusing, to be honest. I'm curious. This is just what I'm working out inside of me with my higher self in my prayer time and meditation time. What if I am the promised land? And what if you are the promised land too? What if it's not some sort of destination that we get to when our dreams finally happen, that we finally feel all of the peace and satisfaction and happiness and joy and woohoo, we're finally made it? What if that's not it? What if the entire search for the promised land was really about a search for ourselves? And the more that we spend time complaining about how things suck or how they're not the way that we want them to be, and we're constantly striving to change ourselves so we can get some sort of outcome, what if that's the thing that actually keeps us from experiencing the peace and the joy and the love and the abundance that we already have access to now if we'll just stop trying to get somewhere else? I've been spending a lot of time just being with myself. And I'm also spending time doing something that I'll admit has been a bit of a challenge. Not thinking and trying to figure it out so much. Because even in this spiritual place that so many of us are in, where we're making changes to the way that we feel, we're healing parts of ourselves that used to be really, really broken, or maybe full of fear and doubt and worry. There's a lot of mental stuff that's involved in all of that. And a lot of spiritual teachers still talk about having a strong mental diet. Neville talks about that extensively. What I understand from his talking and teaching about mental diet is to be very mindful and careful of what it is that we're actually putting inside our heads. What kinds of media are we consuming? What kinds of movies are we watching? What kinds of music are we listening to? What are the emotional effects that's taking place inside of us based on what we are feeding ourselves with our consciousness? I'm becoming more aware of that, and I'll be honest, I'm not watching a lot of the same stuff that I used to. I'm not listening to the same stuff that I used to. I want to treat my mind garden with more reverence and my heart garden with more reverence. And in this way, I'm becoming more of a gardener, Guardian, gardener, a different kind of gardening, if you will. With that in mind, in this respect for our conscious state and the way that we feel about ourselves, and getting out of a place of blaming other people or comparing ourselves to others and how they have it all working out for them, but we don't, or whatever the case may be, getting into a place of feeling joy, feeling gratitude, no matter what is going on out here. Because also, as Neville states, and also Eckhart Tolle and several other amazing teachers, consciousness is reality. So what if the second generation of Israelites were able to cross over into the promised land because metaphysically and metaphorically, they had a different conscious state than the people that came out of Egypt, who seemed to be so prone to complaining and griping and demanding, too attached to an outcome? What if detaching from the outcome and choosing to be love, because that's our natural state, What if being love and living from this place is the promised land? Not having all of the wealth suddenly show up and then we're happy, or suddenly having the romantic, loving relationship of our dreams and now we're happy, or having the job, or having the house, or having the car, or having the things and now we're happy. What if happiness, peace, and love as our state within? What if that's the promised land? How do you feel about that? How does that resonate with you? This is what I'm on board with doing, being the promised land and detaching from the outcome. Because whether or not the money shows up, I'm still cool. Whether or not relationships end up being everything that I ever hoped that they could be, I'm still cool. Because I still choose me. And I still choose to dwell in the wish fulfilled, regardless of what takes place outside of me. How do you feel about that? If you're on board, do what you always do. Drop down into the comments below and say, D. Grant, I choose to be the promised land. Instead of trying to get there, I choose to be there now. Awesome. If you haven't done so already, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe, and get more from me by connecting with me through growthfarming.com. On that platform, I've got so much I'd love to share with you, more than what I can do here in these YouTube videos. A lot of amazing stories, books, courses, teachings, trainings, and our thriving and awesome growth farming community. Check it out. Once again, growthfarming.com. I appreciate you. I love you, and I'll see you again soon.